The Narkina 5 prison arc in Andor Season 1 was arguably the best storytelling of the entire show. It encapsulated the secretive workings of a rising authoritarian regime and the manipulations it played on both inmates and the largely oblivious galactic population. We see the Empire clamping down on dissidents, sentencing them to harsh prison terms for minor infractions. Existing sentences are doubled, and news of the outside world is completely cut off for all prisoners. The repercussions of the Aldhani raid are displayed in full, showing Luthen's prediction of the Empire's severe reaction, resulting in even more feelings of rebellion. Cassian Andor's journey that began as being the wrong person in the wrong place at the wrong time reflects the experience that many suffer in places where fascism finds itself rooted within everyday life. Law enforcement is given the freedom to oppress and intimidate, and the legal process is diminished to nothing more than a kangaroo court. Thus was the intent by showrunner Tony Gilroy to demonstrate how a galaxy of trillions was able to sit back and accept the persecution of the many in return for promises of peace and order, mixed in with a healthy dose of propaganda to keep the narrative focused on what those in power wanted, which often was far from the truth. We see the prison on Narkina 5 presented as a place of civility. Prisoners are seemingly only punished if they break the rules, they're given clean clothes and plenty of food and water, and they live in generally clean conditions. However, as is often the case with the Empire, the truth lies beneath the immaculately presented surface. 12-hour shifts working manual labour, punishments for being the least productive, and the revelation that serving your sentence doesn't actually result in release, but instead resettlement, to begin the hellish process all over again. The inmates had no idea how precarious their position was, constructing elements of a weapon that would bring fear and destruction to the galaxy. They were oblivious to how tightly the knowledge of their work was protected. The Empire was willing to execute 100 inmates because of a singular mistake that threatened to cause dissent, but ironically it was this event that inflamed rebellion within the prison. The Empire runs the prison in a very clever way, allowing inmates to manage themselves with minimal intervention, the likes of Kino Loy running a tight ship in the hopes of winning meagre rewards. However, by propping inmates into positions of leadership, they tighten the noose around their own necks, as these leaders would push others to rise up. When Kino steps up and gives his rousing speech to the masses, the prison break was always going to be unstoppable. It is a heroic and inspiring story tinged with tragedy and struggle. Escaping the prison itself was perhaps the easiest part. Whilst many died in the attempt, almost 5,000 prisoners found themselves swimming for freedom to the nearest shoreline, but what they would find there is a likely depressing end to their tale of resistance. Whilst Cassian and Melshi are able to escape the planet by catching a ride with a couple of fishermen, the others are likely not to have been so lucky. Narkina 5 was selected as a prison world for a reason. Uninhabited outside of the foreign fishermen who had been coming to the world for a long time. It's very unlikely that there were many more presents to offer safe harbour to those who had broken free, as the Imperial prisons had polluted a large majority of the oceans. We see the Empire had dispatched search parties by the time the sun had set, and with there being little in the way of cover in the rocky outlets, those who hadn't drowned in the escape would likely have found themselves being rounded up and recaptured. The bad news wouldn't stop there, with the Empire displaying no reluctance to dispose of troublesome elements of their workforce. It is extremely likely that those who found themselves back in captivity would be executed. Whilst losing nearly 5,000 workers would put a dent in the Empire's production rates, we know that there is more than one prison on Narkina 5, in addition to those across other worlds. The number one priority of the Empire would be preventing knowledge of the revolt from spreading, and the best way to silence someone is to make sure that they cannot speak another word. The prison guards would likely suffer a similar fate, though some of them may have found themselves in the very cells that they helped to guard. In the end, the fact that Cassian was able to escape was nothing short of a miracle. It would be surprising if the total number of those who were able to escape the planet was more than 10. So thorough was the Empire in securing their operation. Most would have found themselves at the end of an Imperial blaster, but plenty would have starved or died from exhaustion too. It is a depressing end for an inspiring story, but As we know, the rebellion's eventual victory was paved with the sacrifice and blood of millions who dared to challenge the Emperor's reign of terror.